Well, for insight into what all this means for the U.S. economy, I'm joined by Anthony Chan. He's former chief economist at JPMorgan Chase. Anthony, always good to have you on the show. We'll focus on the jobs data later, but first, Trump's big, beautiful bill is a go, right? And right before the president's July 4th deadline, a big win for Trump's domestic policy plans. What does this mean for the U.S. economy?
I think what it means for the U.S. economy is that you'll get those tax cuts that everybody in the Republican Party wanted. But at the same time, you got to realize that you're also seeing tax increases in the form of tariffs. They're collecting revenues. So when they say that somehow these tax cuts were necessary, otherwise we get some sort of a recession, the reality is that the tax cuts on a yearly basis are basically just offsetting the increases in tariffs. The economy, on the other hand, has remained quite resilient because it's got a lot of momentum. But at the same time, all these factors are playing into the overall economy at the same time.
Anthony, let's go back to the U.S. jobs report. What's your initial reaction to these numbers?
I'm very pleased with these numbers because it shows that the labor market is quite resilient. It really shows that the Federal Reserve all along has been correct, that somehow they have the luxury of patience to wait, and that they don't have to cut rates 200 to 300 basis points as they've been told by the president to cut those rates, because in fact the economy is not collapsing. When you see the unemployment rate come down to 4.1%, that really tells us that the labor market is strong. And of course, even the average hourly earnings number, while it was soft, the wages are still rising at 3.7% year over year. And keep in mind that the Federal Reserve's inflation target is 2%. So given that as a backdrop, we don't see any real immediate need for the Federal Reserve to cut rates. We understand that the Federal Reserve is under a lot of pressure, and they probably would cut rates if they found an excuse, but this report does not give them that excuse. When you're creating this many jobs at this stage of the economic expansion, you don't have to cut rates into this kind of an environment.
I see. We've been talking about jobs. We've been talking about tariffs. Do you see tariffs and jobs, two variables that interact? How do you see them playing together within the U.S. economy?
Well, Diego, there's good news and bad news. The tariffs certainly are holding back the economy because these are revenues and they're going to hit consumers. And remember, they're hitting lower income consumers that have a higher marginal propensity to consume. So that slows the economy. But these tax cuts, on the other hand, will stimulate the economy. So you can almost argue that it's somewhat of a wash in terms of what the impact of the overall economy is. So I'm not real concerned about the overall economy. The labor market is still very strong. You saw also the ISM services sector. Everybody was watching that because the economy is mostly a service economy, and that actually kicked into an expansion mode. So far, Diego, all indications suggest that the economy is operating on all cylinders, and the probability of something going wrong this year is very, very low at this stage.
And Anthony, the big, beautiful bill includes a lot about immigration policy that will have knock-on effects on the economy. How are you seeing that?
Well, right now, it's going to have a negative impact. You saw the labor force actually drop again, 130,000. It dropped the prior month by more than that, over 600,000. So it is slowing down labor force, which, by the way, Diego, tends to suppress the unemployment rate because you're reducing the labor force. So all these factors are out there. And then in terms of growth in the economy, the American Enterprise Institute, and they are thought to be right-leaning, conservative, they are telling us in a study they just released that it will reduce economic growth this year by about 0.4% because net immigration is essentially going to be zero in 2025. And when you have less immigrants, you're going to have less spending, you're going to have less labor force, less labor. All that is going to suppress economic growth. The good news, Diego, is that the economy still has enough momentum that even if you take out 0.4% off the top of real GDP growth, you still don't push the economy into a recession. You slow it down, but you don't knock it out.
So then how do you expect the Fed to react to all this data?
I think the Federal Reserve realizes that they have to cut interest rates this year, but they don't feel an immediate need to do it. So that means that sometime later in the year, could be September, could be the meeting after, the Federal Reserve will cut rates. I think that they actually will cut rates maybe once or twice this year. If you ask me for one number, I probably will go with 2 cuts, but I'm still firmly of the view that they will not cut rates in July. And in fact, once this number came out, the markets also agreed. I've been saying this on your shows for months, no cut in July. Today's number makes me feel even more comfortable with that they can wait until later in the year to cut rates.